And we're rolling. We're rolling. Hopefully, I am holding this correctly. We're testing out different things. My name's Olivia. Welcome back to another book review. Today, we are reviewing my February reads, which were an interesting selection, to say the least, and you'll find out why. Okay? And if you're new here, hi, welcome. I've got a website called oliviapeck.com where I sell books. And so if you want to buy from me, I've got a selection on there. But I also just like the reading community. So here I am being a part of that. And I'm going to get right into it, into my February reads 2024. February. Yeah, okay. That's enough. The first one is The Owl Service. And this one is old. It's old. It's by, as you can see, Alan Gardner. And I picked this up because I really like books that are set in the woods specifically. And this looked very woodsy. And I have to say, it didn't disappoint. It's set in rural rural Wales. And there's a lot of language in here that actually was super unfamiliar to me. It not only was it old, but it was like Welsh, British, a lot of phrases that I have never heard. But there was one phrase that I heard or read that actually my dad used to say all the time, but I had never heard it anywhere else. And that is the phrase is home again, jiggity jig. So that was fun. It's about this girl, Allison, and she finds these old plate. This is so weird, but she finds these plates in her room, and she discovers that there's some sort of like hidden message in these plates. And honestly, it's not as crazy as I would expect. This is like a thriller for kids, but it's more like a mental game where you think something's going to happen and then, like, what happens? I still could not exactly give you a very good. It's like nothing happens, kind of. This is a great review. This is great. This is a great review. Basically, there's something weird going on in the town, and there's this old guy walking around being weird, and that was kind of awesome. I liked him. But in the comments on Goodreads, there were some good points about the way that they were talking about like the different classes. I don't really know what else to say about this book. It's just a vibe. It's all vibes and not much else. It's a lot of dialogue. Somebody said that it was like a play kind of. I would agree. So anyways, if you want to read something just really different, kind of refreshingly different, then check this out. But it's just kind of a neat little book. Am I going to keep it around? I think I'm going to sell it. Right, the next book that I'm going to talk about is the Britney Spears memoir, which I listened to on tape, and that was read by Michelle Williams. There she is. Guys, this book really rocked my world big time. I didn't know what to expect. I actually just read it because my coworkers and my friends read it, and I was like, I really need to read. I felt like obligated. But once I was reading it, I was kicking myself that I didn't read it earlier because it low key changed my life just because it totally turns upside down everything you thought that happened with Brittany. It gives you a full understanding of her side of the story, and you realize just how mean people were to her, not just her family, which it goes in great detail of, but also just the media and the public. It was really cool to read the book and simultaneously like watch all of the award shows and music videos that she was referring to and watch them in a new light and really appreciate her as an artist. She seems very affected by what she's gone through, and I'm just so rooting for her and I just love her so much. I've been listening to Britney Spears music like a lot lately, and I really hadn't listened to her in years. So Very impactful book. Highly recommend, especially as a millennial. Yeah, it's just really powerful and really really heartbreaking. You know, the next one is the next one is a book by Victor Laval, and it's called Lone Women. And this one is a genre bending book. I wasn't really sure what to expect. It had pretty good reviews. It was recommended by the library. So I was like, okay, sure, let's check it out. I love westerns. I love historical fiction. So I thought this looks great. So I started reading it. It reminded me of a Kristen Hanna historical fiction novel where it's this woman in 1915. What is her name? Adelaide, and she's running from a mysterious past, and it starts off and it's like her parents are dead, and you're wondering, like, did she kill them? Like, what? Why are they dead? You don't really know, but it's very mysterious, and you're kind of like trusting the story. This story takes the most wild turn, especially if you don't know what to expect at all. And I didn't even know that it had any fantastical elements in it at all. I thought it was just maybe like a historical fiction, you know? No, it's not. It's everything. It is literally everything. And it's unique, kind of meanders a little bit. Very interesting book, refreshing. I enjoyed it. I will say, not really like my favorite book in the world, but it was cool. Like it stuck with me a little bit. Now, the next one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Okay, so you've probably heard of this book. It is a classic. At first, I was thinking, oh, this is kind of funny. This is kind of a funny book, but it gets really dark. And especially as an artist, I think it's a must read. It just talks about, I mean, the main theme is vanity and how this guy is basically obsessed with his own image. And it's a deal with the devil type story. Like, there's definitely parts where I could tell that it was written a long time ago and but it's worth noting that it has so many good one-liners in there, just really oof, like very cutting one-liners where after you read it you kind of have to take a second and think about yourself and society and stuff like that. It's one of those. It honestly, I know this is cliche to say, but it does. I know it's about a painting, but it reads like a painting. It's very beautifully written, and I know it's not surprising since Oscar Wilde is one of the greats, but truly it holds up. Not much more to say about it. It's a must read, I would say, for anyone, especially creatives. Two more. I'm going to do the wild card one I read, and then I'm going to go to my favorites this month, okay? The wild card, guys, this was so crazy. No disrespect to this author at all. That's not what I'm saying. But the way that I read this, came to read this, is just like, what the heck? I had never heard of this book, and apparently, like, everyone and their mom has heard of this book, and I had not. So I had no clue what was going on. Basically, I it was Valentine's Day week, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna read a romance. I'm gonna be on theme. So I go on the Libby app, and I'm on my library, and I'm looking up the categories. I go to romance, and I go to classics, and I'm looking for just whatever's available, audiobook, and something that looks interesting. Well, I gravitate towards gothic things, of course. So, anyways, I picked this up and I had no idea. Guys, romance, if you've heard of this, you know where I'm going with this. Flowers in the Attic, guys. I am I am not going to say what this is exactly about, or the why I'm saying romance question mark, because you'll figure it out and you probably already know. It's talk about twisted family drama. Okay? I mean, think of the worst. Yeah. I like this style. I like survivalist stories. I like dark books, dark characters. It's a horror. The fact that people read this when they were teens, like, how are y'all doing? It's just one of those. It's like a rite of passage for a certain like 80s kids, I think, or something. Abuse is also a big thing that happens a lot in this book. So it's pretty dark. Now, some interesting factoids about this book. I actually listened to the 40th anniversary of it, and Gillian Flynn does a whole foreword and she reads it in that edition. And so that was interesting to hear her take before I read the book. And I actually think that made me a lot more open minded and receptive to it. And I really appreciated that because it's just a huge influence on her. And it also made me look into the author a little bit. I have a little more research to do, but she has a really interesting story too, is what I understand. And her life kind of is part of what probably what influenced this book and the series. It's actually a series also, so there's more context if you read the series. And another interesting thing is when they are talking about the Dresden Dolls, that was mentioned. That's what they called the kids, about these four kids, and it's set in the 50s. But anyways, they're referred to as a Dresden Dolls, and I was like, Dresden Dolls? That's like the band. So apparently, the band I looked up on the Wikipedia page. It says that the band, the Dresden Dolls, were actually partially influenced by this book and what their name of the band. So if you're familiar with that band, they're kind of a wild one too, but I was familiar with them when I was in middle school, and so it was like, okay, little interesting there. Huh. Hmm. I thought the writing was creepy, but in terms of like description and setting and all of that jazz, I enjoyed it, even though it was really pretty disturbing and kind of got more and more disturbing as it went on. Life is full of horrors and full of darkness, and that's okay if you're not into horror. I totally get that if you don't want to read about that. Anyway, that's what I thought about it. Now I'm going to tell you my favorite book of the month, and it is Mame. And I'm going to zoom in here. By Jessica George. You're following Maddie. Mame is Ghanaian for woman, and that's what her mother calls Maddie. And Maddie is sort of this introverted, awkward 20 something going through life with this job that's not a forever job. She's trying to figure it out, taking care of her dad, who has Parkinson's, and just navigating life. It's just one of those 20 something coming of age books. And I just loved it. I thought it was very current. I really liked the writing. At first, I will say, at first, I was like, Maddie, get it together, girl. Like, self deprecation, it's too relatable almost. But I thought the character development was great. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I honestly wish that I read it when I was younger because now that I am 30, it's definitely like stuff everybody goes through in their 20s, and of course I've got my I've got my 30s to go through and all those trials and tribulations. But your 20s is a special time, and I wish I had read this book earlier because it was comforting. It just makes you feel not alone and not so weird, especially like talking about relationships and stuff. And there's also like a lot of shame with how we handle relationships. Am I doing the right thing and all that stuff and different experiences? And it was a good read. It was a good read. And I think you will like it if you're a big Lizzie McGuire fan, perhaps. Definitely gave me those vibes. And then right when I was thinking that, she talks about how she feels like she's got a little Lizzie McGuire in her head. It's perfect. It's perfect for millennials, I think, too. Those are the books I read. Most of them were audiobooks. I started reading a fantasy book that is 1,000 pages, and that took up a lot of time as well, but I'm not close to finishing yet. And so hopefully this month I'll be able to finish it. It's a Brandon Sanderson novel. It is so freaking dense, guys. I have not read anything like this before, except for like The Hobbit, and even that was not as dense as this. So wish me luck. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.